everybody. It's time for the weekly news recap, the 21st to the 27th of October 2024. So, this week on Thursday, there was the Indie Horror Showcase, brought to you by Dread XP and The Mix with IGN. There's the full video is available there, the link will be in the description and so on. I'm just going to point out a couple of games that were shown off that I thought were kind of interesting. Some of them we've seen before. So this first one, 10 Dead Doves, has got a bit of a kind of Twin Peaks murder mystery vibe to it, but it's also a bit kind of weird. Well, Twin Peaks is already weird, but this is also weird on top of that. It's kind of moving around different genres and changes art styles a couple of times, which is kind of interesting. There is a demo available for it now, and I think it's slated for release later this year. Maybe the end of this. Oh, yeah, end of this year. Okay. That's 10 Dead Doves. Among Ashes, similarly, also has a demo available now. Among Ashes is a kind of mixed reality game, I guess. You're playing a game inside a game kind of thing. So your character is sitting down at a PC also playing a survival horror game. Things that change inside the game also affect things outside in the house that he's sitting in at the same time. It's pretty interesting. The demo is very off-putting in a good way. It's a horror game kind of way. Anyway, so give that a shot. I think similarly, this is also slated for later this year for its full release. Yeah, end of December. We Harvest Shadows, again, also has a demo available. So We Harvest Shadows is a kind of a mix between a farming, homesteading kind of thing, and at the same time, spooky shit is happening. So your character's mental state is gradually dwindling. You have this painting that's at the bottom of the staircase every day. It changes, and depending on how fucked up it is, that's how bad a day you're going to have, more or less. The ATV is pretty cool to drive around as well, but the Steam Deck was not able for it at all. So hopefully that will improve. This I don't think has a release date just yet. I think it's just going to be next year at some stage. But the demo is getting regular updates, so that's something to look out for. Play the demo, and I don't think, there's no release date or anything for that. Vampire Dynasty. So Vampire Dynasty, whatever way you want to say it, looks a bit ropey, looks a bit jank, but I kind of like the idea of it because it is essentially V-Rising. You remember V-Rising was this isometric, kind of Diablo-esque vampire game that kind of focused a little bit more on crafting. You build up your own, like, Dracula, Castlevania-style castle and go out into the moors and attack people and that kind of thing. And that was cool, but it didn't really have much of a story element to it, and it didn't do any of the real kind of vampire social aspect to it. This game does have you actually talking to people. There might actually be a storyline element to it as well, but it also looks a bit ropey, so see how well it plays. This is obviously early footage. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic on this one. And again, similarly, one, there's no demo for it yet, but I also don't think it has any release date plans. Just the wish list. Cold and Afraid. I kind of like the art direction for this one because it's kind of going for a PS1, PS2 vibe. I think it's put it out in its marketing that it's PS1, but the PS1 could never do this kind of stuff, so it's kind of a weird cross between PS1 and PS2. So it's kind of like a police procedural type thing. You are, investigating a series of murders, but you're also dealing with your own PTSD and trauma, and there is some level of... I think there's some level of supernatural element to it, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think the supernatural element is more just your own PTSD stuff. But yeah, I like the vibe of it. It's a PlayStation 1 style mystery, but PS1 wouldn't be able to do this kind of stuff. It's kind of a weird in-between PS1, PS2 kind of thing to it. Anyway, Cold and Afraid, I think, is for next year. You didn't even get a release date. It's not a great title. I think the title could have done with some work, but anyway. Escape from Mutation Station kind of bills itself as an escape room. So the first person game, puzzles, that kind of thing, lots of interactables and what have you. But it does slowly become you're not just escaping from the room so much as you're escaping from reality in some ways. You're in some kind of simulation type thing. Things get a little bit weird very quickly. You're maybe you're not where you think you are and that kind of thing. Similarly, next year, or just a wish listy coming soon, hopefully. Who knows? Someday. By Sweet Carol has an incredible art direction, so it's like you're watching like an old Disney film, except it's a video game, which is kind of insane. Reminds me a little bit of Forgotten Anne, that had a similar vibe to it, and that you were kind of watching an old cartoon. But this one even more so. It's definitely Clock Tower. Clock Tower by way of like old Disney, I think is kind of what they're going for here. And Sweet Carol herself has some kind of shape-shifting abilities, because you can turn into a rabbit at some points. You can see in the top left corner, whenever it's gameplay elements, you can see in the top left corner. I know you can't see it on that one. Sometimes her portrait in the top left corner has a rabbit with it, and sometimes they swap places. You might see it later on. Possibly. Do I have to skip ahead a few times? I'm just going to skip ahead. See, she's a rabbit there in that one, right? Anyway, and you can play as different characters. Right. Release date on this one next year, I think. Yeah, 2025. Blind Exposure is probably, of all of the games they showed off, it was probably the first, or maybe the only one where I went, nope. Not playing this. Not playing this one at all. So the gist of Blind Exposure is some creature has stolen your eyes, and you have this Polaroid camera that's essentially just filling in the blanks for you. How you were able to see this without any eyes, I don't know. Don't ask questions. But the gist of it is you can't see until you take a picture. But the world is updating around you regardless. So, yeah. No thanks. No thanks. There's another game like that. It uses like echolocation to kind of show monsters or show the environment, and you have to like ping it to see it. And then I think also the gist of that was that the monsters could hear you when you ping to see the environment. So there was that element to it as well. It's not clear if the monsters can just see you in Blind Exposure, or if they can listen to you taking pictures with the camera. I don't know. Either way, no. Absolutely not. I will watch somebody else play that. White Knuckle parkour. I think the gist of this is you're trying to escape from like a big tower or something, and there's horrible monsters chasing you, and you're white knuckling it. Your hands are kind of your grip meter at the same time. The more white they are, the better your grip is. The more red they are, the worse your grip is. And you're using things you pick up in the environment to find ways to climb up. This game feels like it will get you sick really, really fast. There's also some monster elements and things like that. And I think there's like a big monster at some point. Well, there's this thing, which you also have to climb it, which is a bit... Yeah, anyway. I'm kind of curious to see how the game plays, to be honest. How quick it is, or how... Goodness. How fast you need to be, what kind of leeway does it give you? Would it play at all on a console? And it's kind of interesting because it kind of plays the same way VR climbing works. VR climbing works almost exactly like that you reach out to grab things with the controllers. So it would almost perfectly work in a VR game. Be curious if they've thought about porting it, or if somebody else will port it, but anyway, it's a curious one. Dead Letter Department is another you're playing a game inside a game kind of thing. So you're sitting down at this computer, you are taking a temporary job at the Dead Letter Department, and the idea of it is these are all these letters and packages that have nowhere to go. The address is wrong, or the people who were sent there don't live there anymore, or whatever it is, and you are digitizing them, essentially. So you're just typing them into a machine to keep track of them so they can destroy the physical letter to make space, because they don't have any space for it anymore. And and as the game goes on, you discover that there's maybe something wrong with the letters. Some of them you're getting, who knows? It's got a bit of a Papers, Please vibe to it, but a bit more of a horror element. Anyway, it's Dead Letter Department again. Similarly, I think it's next year. Doesn't have one. It does have a demo though, if you're interested in it. And then the last one to point out is Deck of Haunts. Deck of Haunts strikes me as a reverse Betrayal on the House at Haunted Hill. So if you are familiar with that game, Betrayal is you go to this kind of mystery mansion and you lay down cards to kind of flesh out the mansion itself, and it changes every time you play the game. And you discover like occult and eldritch things, and eventually one of the player characters is chosen as the betrayer, and then they have to kill all the other characters. Deck of Haunts is a little bit different in that you are playing the mansion itself and you are trying to kill everybody. But it's a similar way. You are using cards to build out the mansion and put traps down and this kind of thing. So it's got a bit of a dungeon keeper and then also betrayal on the house. Betrayal on the hill at the house on Haunted, whatever the fuck it's called. Anyway, I thought it seemed pretty interesting. Similarly, they don't have a release date for this one either. Anyway, those are some of the games that were on the Indie Horror Showcase. I tried to kind of point out ones that I hadn't seen before, other than 10 Dead Doves. A lot of those games I wasn't aware of, except for, 10 Dead Doves and Among Ashes I had played before, but the others I hadn't played since. And then they did show off a bunch of other ones that we were already aware of. You know, Sorry, We're Closed. Of course, now I can't fucking think of the other games, but anyway, there were a bunch of other ones there. Cabernet, the vampire game, that I've talked about before, so I didn't want to put them into this kind of showcase. But there were a lot of games shown off. It's about an hour and a half show. Trailers every couple of minutes. It was pretty fast-paced. Anyway, outside of that, updates elsewhere. Towers of Aghasba, that I've been saying wrong. I've been saying Aghshaba. It's Aghasba. I just can't read. Anyway, there's a voiceover on this video that actually pronounces it, and it's Towers of Aghasba is the way it's meant to be pronounced. Anyway, that's coming to early access pretty soon, and early access will be on PC and PlayStation. So this trailer is lengthy enough. It's about 7 minutes. It kind of shows off the kind of gameplay, a bit of the environment and stuff like that. But in general, it does strike me as it's not exactly Minecraft, but it is a bit of we're gonna try to rejuvenate the environment. So you're this one person who's survived this incredible cataclysm. You and whoever multiplayer characters or multiplayer friends decide to join you. The gist of it is you survived this cataclysm, and it's your job to kind of rejuvenate the landscape and deal with this kind of awful, petrified, calcified area that's at the center of everything. But to do that, you need to build up your resources and make friends and get better equipment. I guess it's got a bit of a grounded vibe to it as well. He's also got these horrible hand creatures that are not from Elden Ring, but they still look awful. So you build up villages. I assume there'll be NPCs in the village, but it's not clear because you don't see at least in this trailer, you don't see the player interacting with NPCs. You only see them interacting with other players, so it's not clear if the villages have NPC elements to them. But there's clearly a lot of flora and fauna that you can rebuild over time. There are different biomes that you make your way around. There's this big tree that's at the center of a lot of them that's kind of responsible, and I think you radiate out from that. There's a bit of a No Man's Sky thing for identifying creatures, and then working with them to find different resources or killing them to harvest them for different things and what have you. And I think then the end goal of the game, after you've built up a lot of stuff and you have a few resources available to you, is to then kind of delve into them more. Oh no, there are NPCs. Never mind. I don't think there are human NPCs. I think it was the issue. I'm just going to skip ahead because this seems to be what the end game is. Just to go into this kind of calcified area and fight these creatures and try to rejuvenate this area of the world as well. Anyway, that's Towers of Aghasba. It's early access. I think it's later this year. I'm skipping ahead very quickly here. I'm going to miss it. November 19th, yeah. Middle of into the middle of November. Anyway, it's Tower of Ekhalba. Vampire Survivors. There was one game that would have expected had a Castlevania crossover by now. It would have been Vampire Survivors. So it took them a minute, but they finally got there. So Vampire Survivors has the not obligatory, but somewhat expected Castlevania crossover after like 6 expansions, 6 DLCs or something. They're finally doing it. Anyway, lots of characters from the Castlevania series, all of them, I think, at least all of the playable ones. Lots of weapons and missions and what have you for the Vampire Survivors thing coming in Halloween, October 31st. You haven't played Vampire Survivors before, it's a pretty basic game that has a lot of playability to it. You're just dropped into the environment, lots of enemies attacking you in waves. You gradually build up your power base until you're able to just stomp them out of it. What's kind of interesting here is there's a second bar. And now I've never played in co-op, so this might be a co-op thing. But it might also just be a new thing, like a new game mechanic, but I think it might just be a co-op thing. I've never played in co-op, so I don't know what that second bar is, although it's not there with them. I don't know what that second bar is. It's interesting. I've played a lot of Vampire Survivors and I've never seen it, so I don't know what it is. Anyway, lots of Castlevania things, lots of monsters from Castlevania, levels and what have you. Last thing for our updates, Monster Hunter Wilds had a new trailer and a new showcase and a bunch of other stuff. But kind of the more important thing to point out is Monster Hunter Wilds is getting a beta next week. It'll run for the whole week. If you are a PlayStation Plus subscriber, you'll be able to play for the whole week. If you're not, it'll be half of the week, I think, the second half of next week. If you're watching this is October 28th to the end, or to the beginning of November. This trailer showing off a new monster type, the Black Flame. Kind of ape turtle thing. I don't know why I call it a turtle. It just has a big thing on its back. Anyway, it looks pretty tough. But on the other hand, you can do this, which is kind of nuts. Anyway, Monster Hunter Wilds beta for next week. Again, if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, I think it's just standard PlayStation Plus, but I'm not sure. You can play the beta for the whole thing. The beta will include a character creator, a story mission, and a one just free roaming thing, I think. Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. All right, anyway, moving on. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, newly released Batman Arkham Shadow. Unfortunately, it's exclusive to the Meta Quest. We'll see if they make a change on that at some point, but from what I've read from reviews, it is very, very good, which was not expected at all. This was expected to be not a great thing, but as it turns out, it's pretty good. So now I'm even more annoyed that it's a Meta exclusive. Anyway, it is essentially just a Batman Arkham game, but you're playing it from first person. Or playing it from first person VR. Anyway, I'm very annoyed that it's a MetaQuest exclusive. Hopefully that will change. Maybe a year from now they'll change their mind. Anyway, Batman Arkham Shadow. The Axis Unseen is from, I think it's a former Skyrim dev. So the Axis Unseen is this kind of archery survival type thing where you're out in the middle of nowhere. And there's these monsters that are hunting you, but you're also hunting those monsters. I don't know if there's much of a storyline to it. I tried to play this on the Steam Deck, and the Steam Deck just went no. Just no. Pretty much. It is leaning pretty hard into the hunting element of it. There is like concepts of being downwind of the monster and stuff like that, so they're able to, if they can pick up your scent, you know, that's what the flag is meant to show when they hold up the flag and they hold up the arrows. The arrow is meant to be, or the flag is meant to be showing the wind trajectory. Anyway, it looks really cool, but I couldn't get the Steam Deck to play it, so who knows? Maybe it'll be better optimized now, because when I played it was like the demo. It was a while ago, so potentially it's been optimized better since then, but I kind of doubt it. Anyway. It's also PC only. Forgive Me Father 2, again, a sequel to Forgive Me Father 1. It's a kind of a boomer shooter. like Eldritch Horror, Cthulhu, Lovecraft kind of stuff. The first game was pretty good. It didn't have much of a story element to it. The second one seems to have a little bit more of it. First game had 2 characters. You're only playing as 1 character this time around, so you're following the priest from the first game. There's a lot of different ones you can see. There's a lot of different weapon types. What's kind of interesting about the weapon types is that they kind of start off as your standard like pistol, shotgun, rifle, what have you. And the more kind of points you put into it, the more horrible eldritch shit happens to them. So like the rifle turns into like this kind of squid thing. Shotgun turns into this weird mantis looking weird. Anyway, the weapons are really interesting and really strange. And it's pretty good evolution on Forgive Me Father 1 from what I've seen anyway. Wilmot Works It Out is it's a pretty casual puzzle game. It's got a bit of like a jigsaw element to it, and puzzly type things. It's quite satisfying to play, honestly, and you build up this little art gallery as you go on. It's quite nice. I like it. Not much else I could say about it. That's all. It's a jigsaw-based kind of thing. I think it's cool. Anyway, it's Wilmot Works It Out. Fear the Spotlight is the first game from Bloomhouse Games, though I think Fear the Spotlight has been out for a while already, and I think this is just... I think it got a new release when it joined Bloomhouse Games, and then got a bit more money pumped into it, and they changed a couple of things about the original game. But it's got a bit of a survival horror element to it, so I'm all for that. Quite interested to see how it plays. And I've heard some pretty good press about it, so yeah, I'm kind of interested to check that one out. And then last, we have Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. This is a remaster of Romancing Saga 2, the original PS1. I think it was a PS1 JRPG. The demo was a bit dry, but from what I've seen from lengthier playthroughs of the full game, it's a little bit better than that. The kind of gist of it is 7 heroes from the past who were responsible for saving the kingdoms of man long ago have returned, but they've returned evil, and now they're trying to destroy it, and now you have to deal with them. The saga series typically, as the name might suggest, takes place over a bunch of generations. It's a saga, so it's like your sons will inherit, or your daughter will inherit the kingdom, and you'll have to continue on like that. I'm not sure if it works the way that, like, if you straight up die, is that how it works? Or... I'm not sure. Anyway, there's like the inheritance thing. I'll select the next emperor of wherever the kingdom is. That's what they'll be like, and they'll inherit some of your abilities. I don't think they get all of the abilities, but they get most of them. It depends on your... I think it depends on some of your choices, but again, I'm not sure how the inheritance thing works. But anyway, you won't be stuck with the same character, but obviously your party is going to change fairly rapidly as well, because you're going through generations, become... You know, people who started off as novices will become veterans, and they'll be retired, and then they'll be dead. So it's that kind of thing to deal with. Anyway, unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, video game industry. So Netflix shuts down its California game studio before it made any games at all. So this was going to be Netflix's AAA development studio. It had brought on a lot of pretty big, heavy hitters. Shako Sonny, Joseph Staten, and Rafael Grasserati together have worked on things like God of War, at least. Rafael Grasserati. I kind of had this in my head who they were, and then I said, I don't need to write it down, I'll remember. I don't fucking remember now. But they were pretty big AAA developers who've worked on a lot of pretty cool things. And they were poached by Netflix to, hey, why don't you come over and take on our AAA staff? And now they've shut down the whole thing without ever releasing a game. This is kind of indicative of how companies that aren't typically into games try to get into the game business. So Netflix, Amazon, Facebook have kind of tried to come into it, and they've treated it like their product. And how they're able to turn those around quickly and how they work. And forgetting that games take ages. They take a really long time to make. And for whatever reason, no matter how many times they're told that, it's always a surprise that games take a really long time to make. And it's why you have Amazon still haven't put out a game because they keep having to restart things. Netflix hasn't put out their own game. They've just taken other games and brought them in under their umbrella. Meta had to buy what was it? Beat Saber. You know, Beat Saber was already a game, and then they bought it. Like they did. I still don't think they've developed their own game yet. All of those kind of things. Anyway, the layoffs have affected 35 people. It's 35 people who were poached from what should have been other AAA studios or AA or indie studios and have instead have a big gap in their resume now, basically. Anyway, moving on. NCSoft, more layoffs. NCSoft suffers layoffs, fires people, cancels projects, including ultra-realistic, this thing that we didn't really know too much about. Anyway, they've pulled back on a lot of their subsidiaries, despite saying that early this week, Korean developer and publisher announced a shift to focusing on 4 wholly owned subsidiaries, yada yada. So the issue they had, or what they put out in their press release, was that they had centralized too much of their work and, you know, weren't focusing on their subsidiaries enough, and they were letting them spend money or whatever it was. And hang on, it might be in this article. Operating in a way that most of the manpower and functions are concentrated at headquarters, financial performance has continued to deteriorate. We're at risk of becoming a chronically loss-making company. So instead of that, you're going to cut off a bunch of your subsidiaries instead. Anyway, they're going to focus on 4 of them. Throne of Liberty was recently released, kind of a big MMO thing. And I don't know what Triple L and Tactan are. Never heard of it. Kind of more disappointingly, though, their 4th thing that they're going to focus on is AI. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. I'm allergic to bullshit, I guess. All right, anyway. AI technology development and business expansion. Yes, at a time when AI is only losing money. That's what we're going to put all of our business expenses into. So we're going to cancel a bunch of projects, ceasing development on certain projects, firing people so we can put all of that money into AI. Okay, cool. Reassignment of internal members and the implementation of a voluntary retirement program. Thanks. Voluntarily retired. Or fired. There's another way to put that. Anyway, they blamed the layoffs at the company on its financial troubles, with the executives apologizing to affected staff, but notably none of the executives were let go, because of course. Anyway. Disappointing shit out of them. Anyway, speaking of executives not actually taking the brunt of any of these issues, Microsoft CEO's pay rises 63%. When was the last time you got a raise of 63? When was the last time you got a raise? But when was the last time you got a raise of 63%? Despite devastating year for layoffs. So in 2024 alone, it was 1,900 staff were laid off at the beginning of this year, and then 650 specifically Xbox employees were laid off just in September. But no, 63%. You're doing such a good job that you had to lay off 2,500 people. Cool. As well as shutting down Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, and what have you. Now, obviously, this is Microsoft's CEO and not Xbox's CEO. Microsoft are, at least on paper, doing okay, but of course, AI shit is eating into a lot of their money with nothing to show for it. Anyway, there was some talk there. Why is this here? Go away. There was some talk at the earnings report that they are continuing to bring games to other platforms, so you'll still be expecting to see Xbox games on Switch and PlayStation in the future. We do have Indiana Jones on the way, but yeah, 63%. Fucking ridiculous. Moving on. Right, the only way to deal with 63% fucking CEO pay is to unionize. Right, 2K's mocap team files to unionize a necessary step for the studio. So the original story, the motion capture studio behind things like XCOM, Bioshock, and pretty much all of 2K's sports stuff, the guys who do the mocap for that have called for voluntary recognition from Take-Two, and they've also filed for a union election. They'll be represented by IATSE, which is the... something. The T means theater, and I know it's like a theater actors thing, but I can't remember what the actual initialism is. Anyway, So the team are seeking, as part of the unionization efforts, they're seeking just pretty basic shit: job security, pay equity, wage minimums for new hires. Claim that wages are still well below par of their industry peers. So why unionize? Why not just take this to management? Take your issues to management. Management has failed repeatedly to hear our voices when issues arise, which made us feel unheard and ultimately undervalued, and in management's eyes, expendable. This is from scene fabricator Cameron Boyce. Stage technician Connor Bredbeck added, inequities are endemic to the gaming industry and detract from the work we are all so passionate about. Our love for the work we do has not only allowed us to organize, but is also the reason we are organizing in the first place. So inequities like 63% pay raise for the guy who's doing such a good job you had to lay off a bunch of people. These dedicated individuals are essential to the success of the world-class video games their labor helps create. That's from IATSE's International VP. Anyway, 2K did come back and said the corporate shit of, oh yeah, we'll definitely fully engage, even though we haven't at all this whole time. 2K fully respects the rights of those employees to choose through informed voting whether they decide to be represented by the word I can't say. IAT. Why am I having so much difficulty seeing that? IATSE. Anyway. We know the needs of our workforce are diverse. Our industry faces new challenges. We continue yada yada yada. We feel that we are best served addressing these challenges and changing needs together through our existing feedback channels rather than through, oh, love of God, rather than through a union. Oh, please don't unionize. Please just do it individually so we can ignore you, which is exactly what they've mentioned down here. Management has failed repeatedly to hear our voices when issues arise. No, use the usual feedback channels. Management has failed to repeatedly to hear our, but no, don't unionize though. Anyway, we'll see what comes of that, how kind of union busting 2K decides to get involved in it, because you know they will. Alright, moving on. Beyond Good and Evil 2, apparently still a thing, still alive, very slowly shuffling forward with new leadership. 2K are... Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been in development hell for like a million years. 2008 was when it was initially teased. Then through years of stalled productions, high-profile departures, they eventually had a big debut at E3 in 2017. Big hands-off demo, looked very impressive, but there was no actual gameplay. It was all pre-rendered CG stuff. Demo was presented by Michel Ancel, Guillaume Brunier, neither of whom are still with the project for not great reasons, honestly. Ancel left Ubisoft in 2020 amid reports of toxic leadership and chaotic direction. He wasn't great to work with. It's kind of the general gist of it. He's kind of a big shithead. But he's back with Ubisoft because, of course, he's back going to be working on their new Rayman thing. Anyway, Brunier was removed from Beyond Good and Evil 2 earlier this year because of gridlock indecision, changing of features. Basically, he just wouldn't push the game forward. He just kept changing things and changing scope. And Ubisoft were like, we're spending all this money and we're literally standing in place doing nothing. So he got kicked out. So Francis Coldebeuf, great name, had already been working on the game as a producer, has now taken over as creative director. Then there was a loss of its creative director last year. Emile Morel died tragically back in July of last year. They hadn't had anyone to replace him for a good while. Fauzi Mesmar, formerly VP of Global Creative at Ubisoft, is now stepping in to that position. So who is Francis taking over for? Producer. Okay, so he's taking over senior producer. Anyway, that is all to say that it's been kind of in limbo for a good while, but apparently things are starting to look up now. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has now been in development for even longer than the notorious Duke Nukem Forever. It's like 12 years, I think. Many publishers would have cancelled the troubled money pit long ago, and some developers within Ubisoft still see it as a drain amid belt-tightening that has forced the cancellation of plenty of other projects. We'll talk about that in a second. The company hasn't cut its losses yet, though. It's possible that 7 years since it was first shown at E3, it could still climb out of development hell. So apparently it's passed some internal milestones, there's some positive feedback, things might be actually getting somewhere, yada yada yada. But speaking of those cancelled projects, Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown development team has been disbanded. It's unlikely we're going to be seeing a sequel anytime soon. So the Prince of Persia, The Lost Crowns team has been disbanded earlier this week. Ubisoft essentially confirmed it. Burnout would have been reported. The game's team were still present and busy at development studio Ubisoft Montpellier. What else are Ubisoft Montpellier working on? That. So they've been disbanded so they can work on the Money Pit game, basically. So, yeah, the Monkey's Paw. We did the Monkey's Paw thing. Oh, I'd love a sequel to Beyond Good and Evil 2. Monkey's Paw Curl. Fuck you. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was really good. Anyway, most of the team members who worked on Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown have shifted to other projects that will benefit from their expertise. We know players have a love for this brand. Love for this brand. That's a way to say it. And Ubisoft is excited to bring more Prince of Persia experiences in the future. More experiences in the future by shit-canning the team that made a really good one. Anyway, they're talking about the Sands of Time remake that has also been in development hell. Anyway, that's a horrible Monkey's Paw thing. You're not gonna get a sequel to The Lost Crown, but you might get a sequel to Beyond Good and Evil 2. Anyway, Bungie creative team joins PlayStation to support live service games. So Sony still haven't learned their lesson about live service things, and they're still going all in on it. Anyway, this is mostly fallout from the last Destiny layoffs issue. So Destiny did have a bunch of layoffs, 220 staff in July this year, and it was kind of suggested that some of those people would actually weren't necessarily laid off so much as they were working for Sony now instead. So a bunch of people, they've got a new person, Bungie Creative Studios, taking on a new role as Senior Director of Creative at PlayStation Studios. This is from Bridget O'Neill, who was previously Senior Director for Bungie Creative Studios. So now they're Senior Director of Creative, whatever that means. That does feel like a... That feels like a pigeonhole. Not a pigeonhole, what is it trying to put it? Memory hold, even? It's like, we don't want to fire you, but we also don't think you're good at your job, so we're just going to put you in some made-up bullshit. Anyway, they're going to be doing that. Some of the staff, it's alleged, have come over as part of the Bungie layoffs that technically weren't layoffs. They were just moved to a different developer or a different department, but they are now essentially under PlayStation instead of Bungie, because Bungie's leadership has missed a lot of its milestones and that kind of thing. So it's not been doing a good job, and Sony are now having to crack the whip on them. Anyway, last thing, it's not great news, but it was also somewhat expected news, if the website would load. US Copyright Office rejects DMCA exemption to support games preservation. So this was essentially the idea that physical games libraries could be digitized and emulated and made available for people. And the DMCA issue was, of course, it's copyright, blah, blah, blah. That was the summation of their argument. And it won. So that's good. Good news for everybody. Anyway, the US Copyright Office will not expand an exemption to the DMCA rules that would have allowed for video game preservation in libraries and archives. The Video Game History Foundation, as well as the Software Preservation Network, are looking to find a way for libraries and archives to remotely share digital access to out-of-print games. Out-of-print is important here, because I don't know how they can claim copyright for games that they are not printing anymore. They're not selling them anymore. This should be a straightforward exemption. Like, you're not losing any money because you're not selling the game anymore. Anyway, they said they were disappointed by the office's decision because, of course, there was a study put out last year to show that 87% of games released prior to 2010 in the US were virtually inaccessible. They're either locked up in other people's private libraries, where the game is no longer in print, or the console to play them on is no longer manufactured, and so on and so forth. But 87%, that is a ton. If they said the same thing about books, there'd be fucking uproar. Music, film, any other industry, but not games, for some reason. Anyway, the ESA, shitheads, that's the lobbying group for essentially the big publishers. Electronic Software Association used to run E3 and what have you. That's the big lobbying group for people like Microsoft, Sony, not Nintendo anymore. I don't think Nintendo are part of it anymore. EA, Warner Brothers, Activision before Microsoft bought them. All those guys, all those really good for game preservation people. Anyway, They claimed that VGHF did not propose a clear requirement to know who the users are or why they want to access a game. When you go to a library, there is no requirement. There's a requirement to know who they are, I guess, because they have a library card, but the reason why they want the book is never brought up. The reason why you want to rent a film is never brought up. The reason why any of these things is never brought up. Why would it have to be brought up here? They want to access the game to play the fucking game. What other reason do you want? And that they would reserve almost complete discretion in how they would provide access to the preserved games. Again, libraries. That's what they do. They have discretion on how they lend out the book. It's literally all they wanted to do, is just make it a library. It does go back to the kind of idea that if libraries weren't a thing and somebody proposed them now, they would never get made. Like, no fucking way. Anyway, the ESA has repeatedly pushed back against game preservation efforts. Eventually, they just keep saying money, money, money. Anyway, they're kind to claim that there is a substantial market still exists for classic games, where you can't fucking buy them. All you have is the secondary market of people selling games between each other. You're not making any money off that. I don't know why you're backing it. And also, making these games available would reduce the ridiculous prices that they have. That does feel like the real issues. I'm trying to preserve how expensive it is to buy first copy of Big World of Sports, whatever the fuck it is, that ridiculously expensive one. Preservation is an issue to be handled by the publishers and their affiliates. Do it then. Do it then. You're not, though. 87% of games before 2010 are inaccessible. You're not doing that job. Anyway, this was their stance back in 2023, that preservation is an issue to be handled by the publishers and their affiliates, not historians or archivists of any kind. No, definitely not those guys. Not the guys who are responsible for preservation everywhere else in every other industry. No. Publishers. They should do it. Not the archivists. Literally what they do. How did this fucking pass? Anyway, they sided with the ESA, saying that the Video Game History Fund have not met their burden of showing that reproducing works to allow for multiple simultaneous use in the computer program class is likely to be fair. Fair to who? Who are we being fair to? Because we're sure as shit not being fair to the public. Who are we being fair to? Anyway. Extremely disappointing stuff. Right, we'll leave Man Bat to play. Anyway, you can always pirate shit. Anyway, moving on. That's some of the news for 21st to 27th of October 2024. Indie Game Showcase, again, is always very impressive. It's great that they're able to put that on all indie games as well. There's no, like, AAA or publishers are having to drop in ads every 2 seconds for them. Again, I only showed off a couple of games. There were way more. Also, very impressive things. Powers of Ikhazba, not sure if it's wrong. Like, I'm very impressed by its scope and its ambition. Just not sure if I'd be interested in playing it, I guess. I think I just need to see unedited gameplay, more or less. Monster Hunter Wilds getting a beta, that's pretty cool. Way ahead of when it's actually supposed to come out. It's not going to come out until next year, February, at some stage. So way ahead. They're obviously very confident in the game, but I guess we'll see when the beta's running next week. We'll see what the restrictions are. If there aren't many, then I might stream it. I know I haven't actually streamed any video games in quite a while. That's obviously something else I'm grappling with myself, but I don't know, it might get me out of it. Anyway, and then Vampire Survivors getting what should have been an obligatory crossover. It almost felt like a parody seeing that Vampire Survivors has a Castlevania DLC. It's like of course it does. Like, if any game is supposed to have it, it should have been this one. I mean, that has one, and V Rising has one. There's the two that were like, of course. Like, of course they have a Castlevania crossover. Anyway, there was no monthly games this week. 'Cause we're at just a particular point where we don't have it. I guess Sony will talk about their monthly games next week instead. New releases. Batman Arkham Shadow being a meta exclusive is annoying. It's quite frustrating because I really want to play it, and I don't have much on the VR thing at the moment that I'm dying to play. But I am very much dying to play that one. Alright, anyway. Romancing Saga 2, the demo was really dry, that's the thing, and it didn't really go into the lineage thing too much. So I don't really know how it would play, but I have seen it's getting some pretty good reviews. The Steam response to it, at least, has been pretty good. I don't know, someone will have to check out, because there's a fucking ton of JRPGs on my backlog that I haven't touched, that I need to get back to. Start, play, what have you. Anyway. Over on the industry bullshit side, the game preservation thing is still annoying me, because the ESA's argument is bullshit, and the idea that it's not being fair. Who's it not being fair to? Whose side are the court is supposed to be on for these kind of things? You'd think they're supposed to be on the public side, but apparently not. I shouldn't be shocked, really, that the courts are on private enterprises' side, but again, it's still frustrating. Anyway, Ubisoft disbanding the Lost Crown team so that they can put them on the albatross that is Beyond Good and Evil 2. I mean, if it eventually results in that game actually coming out, fine, I guess. But also, you had a good thing there. You really should have left them with it. Anyway, I know Lost Crown didn't do great commercially, but a lot of that has to do with Ubisoft making the decision to not release it on Steam right away. They kept it on Ubisoft Play or Uplay or whatever, trying to get subscription money instead of getting just actual money. If they had released that on Steam straight away, that would have been a very different story. But they didn't. Anyway, what else do we have? Microsoft CEO getting too much money for doing a bad job. NCSoft cutting jobs so they can put more money into AI that is already losing money and has nothing to show for it. It's all bad news. I don't think there was any good news. The 2K unionizing thing is potential good news. We'll see how it works out for them. Hopefully they do get their union and 2K doesn't union bust. I mean, they're going to, but we'll see how successful it is, I guess. Anyway, that's it for me for today. I'm not going to do a channel update because we haven't really done anything in a good while. I'm still trying to get back to it. The only real change is daylight savings time is over, whatever you would want to call it. Irish summertime. The summer is well and truly past, so we're back to GMT. That's really the only change. But whatever. My streams have been random. Anyway, we'll try to get back to them. We'll see how it works this week. I don't know. I'm trying to get past my own depression blocks and seasonal affective disorder, and it's my birthday soon and I feel bad about it and so on. I don't know. You might see me next week, or if you do, you'll see me on Weekly News Recap again, probably. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and possibly see you at some stage next week. Bye.